way to do that is via chat. So if you have any questions or clarifications that you want to pop into chat, please do, and I'll represent those back to Lucy as soon as I can. And then finally, we are planning on doing a short breakout towards the start of the session. So do realize that breakouts may not suit everybody depending on your current situation, where you are at home or whatever. But if you can join the breakout, it'll just be for about 5 or 6 minutes just to get a little discussion and collaboration going. So I'm nearly done and I'm nearly ready to hand over to Lucy. But one final thing that I want to do, at Tangent, we're all about connecting with our customers. And I'm going to take an opportunity to run a really quick poll to run some market research. And I'm going to launch the poll now. So you should see it. Basically, as a program manager, I'm trying to understand what customers would like to do in terms of attending a program. Would they like to attend a program in a condensed format, which would be in person over 2 to 3 days in Tangent, or whether they'd prefer it a bit more spaced out, maybe over the course of 8 weeks, and that would be online. So thank you to everyone who's voted already. We have all votes in, I think. Oh no, a couple of more to come in, so I'll just leave it a second. A few more coming in, 4 more left. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, for anyone who was on the taster session last week, we've got similar results in that it's kind of right down the middle. So I'll share the results. I think you can see them now. So 50-50. So like exactly what I said last week, maybe I need to run 2 versions of the course. So all good. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating there. I'm going to stop sharing and I am going to introduce Lucy. So as I said, Lucy is one of our facilitators on the 8-week program on innovative people practices, and she will give you a taster into team dynamics, which is one of the subject areas in that program. Lucy, how are you?
Hello, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I joined the session earlier, yawning with Shay, so it'll give you a sense of where I'm at. I'm in my warm jumper. It's quite cold today, so but yeah, and welcome to the session this afternoon. And look, what we're going to do is we're going to just do a quick little taster on the team dynamics session that we do, and just to give you a bit of background on me. I run a company called the Brave Lab with another woman called Jess Hayden. And at the Brave Lab, we really work to build brave cultures where teams can do first. And we work in partnership with Tangent on this course and across a number of other courses that they do. My background, I spent nearly 10 years working in Google, actually, in Dublin, and worked all across the organization, ending up in kind of working in their learning and development department, working with teams and leadership. To really create great teams that really support each other. So I'm going to jump straight into it. I have some slides. I will throw them up. What are we going to be covering in this session? So we're going to kick off by actually getting you to reflect on your experience of great team or good team dynamics. And then we'll look a little bit about, well, how do you go about laying foundations for success? And what do high-performing teams look like? So what does a high-performing team look like? And what are some of the things that a high-performing team does actively? So I will just share my slides if you give me a moment. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot, so bear with me a moment. How many years have we been doing this online thing now? Still figuring it out. Oh.
All good.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Great. So this is what we'll be looking at in the taster session. But I want to kick off by getting you to actually reflect a little bit about what is your best experience of working on a team or a project or a department or with a group of people, okay? And I just want you to take a minute or two to think about that and really consider, what did the leader or other team members do to cultivate that experience? All right. So just take a couple of minutes to have a think about that. I am actually I'm gonna drop you into breakout rooms to have just a 5-minute conversation with someone else about this. And you don't, I mean, obviously, as I say, we know the breakouts don't work for everyone. And for those of you who may be streaming with us, that won't work for you either. But we just want you to have the opportunity to kind of talk about like what are some of these things that really help cultivate that experience. Okay. And when you come back, I'll get you to either one person can feed back some of the stuff you talked about, or you can simply throw it into the chat. Okay. But I really want to gather that a little bit from the group. So Shay, I reckon you can open up the breakouts. We'll give you about it's 1:08 now. We'll bring you back in about 5 to 7 minutes, definitely by 1:15. And as I said, you will have the opportunity to feedback and chat. So if going into breakout doesn't work for you, that's absolutely fine. You can continue to think about it and then come back and put it in the chat afterwards. So come back 1:15 at the latest. We'll give you a little announcement, and you should be in groups of around 3. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to start those now. So invites to breakout rooms should be with you all. I can see some people moving in. If anyone needs help, I can manually move you into a room. So just let me know if you need help there with that. I'm just moving a few people around, Lucy, to make sure someone has someone to talk to.
Good.
Again, if anyone needs help to move into a breakout room, just let me know and I can manually move you in. This question gave me a flashback, Lucy, to a place I used to work where randomly in the office they would everyone had a Nerf gun.
Yeah.
And randomly there'd be Nerf gun battles would
Wow.
happen around the office. Yeah, it was pretty relaxed, fun kind of company. But that could happen. It could last for like 15 or 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of place where you didn't have like loads of meetings, it was more you'd meet people in person, so people weren't generally online and stuff, but it was a lot of fun, a good release.
Well, that's it. There's the element of and like fun is a key element, right? To a successful team is to be able to have fun and to get that release. I was in a session yesterday and we were having a great conversation about like even, some people just want to get stuff off their chest, and doing it with humor is a way to do that. And I think this would be good as well. Like I remember in one of the teams that I worked in, we used to have every Thursday at like 11, it was just a stretch. You go to this particular place in the office and everyone would just stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice. It was a nice way to just connect with people. And it would be people from so it was a broader team, and then there were sub teams within it, and people from across the sub teams would come. So you get to talk to people and see people that you hadn't seen in a while. And I do think that is possibly one of the challenges with the online working now as well. You don't get that piece, but there are ways. We might close the rooms there, so give them, is it a 60-second warning?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll close it there. Yeah,
good. We'll bring people back.
Yeah, talking about stretching, I did observe in a public service organization once when I was having an online call that on the hour, every hour, they do a minute stretch. So there's an alarm in the office and everyone stands up and they do a stretch.
Yeah, no, that's great. Oh, I think I'm particularly tuned in at the minute because my body is just feeling really stiff, and I'm like, stretch it, and it's so good when you do it. But it's all, like all of these things, and I think we might have a bit of a conversation about it now. We know what needs to be done. It's the act of doing it that can be the challenge.
For sure, yeah.
All right, folks, these are all coming back in. Nice to see you. I hope you've had a nice conversation. I know it was it's a bit of a big thing to just drop people into breakout as soon as they come on a call with people they may not know. But I hope that you had some nice conversation. Okay.
Everyone should be back there now.
Brilliant. Super. All right. Welcome back, folks. I hope you've had a nice conversation. I was just apologizing for dumping you into a room with random people as soon as you come on the call. So thank you for your patience with that. I would love to just get some feedback from the rooms. You can do it by coming off mute and just having, speaking, or you can throw it into the chat. What are some of those things that the leadership or other team members did to cultivate that great experience? You don't need to give us details of the experience, just the elements that really fed into it.
Lucy, I can give you a bit of feedback from our chat.
That would be great. Who's speaking to me? I just need to...
Hi, it's Karen.
Karen, brilliant.
Yeah. So I was speaking with somebody in the room and their team really benefited from the communication of the leader. So there was a good level of communication, and the leader also understood the strengths and weaknesses of the team.
Yes.
And assigned tasks.
Yeah.
Obviously, well, that kind of delegation.
Yeah.
And there was constructive feedback.
Yes.
Constructive feedback was mentioned by this person as part of a positive team experience. She didn't actually get it so much in that particular team, but yeah. And then also we talked about feedback being negative and critical, and there was a question from our group as to whether maybe there is no place for negative feedback, and it should be broached. Feedback should be broached with a different slant. Kind of hard, but I appreciate that type of approach when I deal with my own children, and you know, not being negative and not saying no, to bring that forward to adults. Anyway, that's what we came up with.
Super, and it's a really interesting piece about the feedback, and we'll touch on it a little bit later on about it's one of the things that high performing teams do. They give each other feedback, and they do it regularly, and it's not just constructive, it is positive, a lot of positive feedback, reinforcing the good things over and over again. I'm quickly looking up a book here that I have touched on. I've read little bits about it, called Radical Candor. It's by a woman called Kim Scott, who actually was a director of mine in Google years ago. I met her a couple of times, but she's wrote this book about feedback and how to give feedback. And, you know, I suppose negative feedback, the term, it's really how you perceive it. Is it negative or is it constructive? And her whole thing is to care personally, but challenge directly. And, you know, it's that element of care has to be there in order to deliver that constructive feedback. And if the person gets an indicator that you don't care, then it can be misinterpreted or can come across in a way that is not there. It's not going to land, you know. But I would actually, I put it out to the group if anyone wants to add to the chat the question of, is there room for negative feedback? Is there room for negative feedback? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
It depends. Again, I suppose it's the term you're using, negative feedback. That terminology, there's no room for negative feedback. It's constructive. But the other thing, I suppose, there's another element to it. It's not about the feedback, it's about the individual. And it's about, if you're a person, are you able to gauge the room or recognize, not necessarily weaknesses or flaws, but sensitivities in the room, or is there something that you've observed within the group previously, or if it's a working group that you're with for a long time, like, are you aware of other people, just not just yourself and their sensitivities? So when you're giving that feedback, that you're more cognitive of the fact that it's not going to land with everybody, and if it doesn't land with everybody, why is it not landing? Is it how you're phrasing it? Is the terminology, is the wording that you're using? Feedback is always good, I feel. But for me, it's very much about how I perceive it as well.
It's interesting, Linda. You talk about the reading into the space and the, you know, the room you're in, and this also brings up another thing about, well, how do you give feedback, right? And I recognize this session isn't just about feedback, but it's a very interesting conversation, right? You know, constructive feedback for the most case should be given one-to-one and not in a group environment, right? You should be giving people a constructive feedback on a one-to-one basis. Now, I will say that we do a lot of work with kind of product teams and people who work in tech space. And, you know, there is practice within agile environments where you have feedback on code in a more of a group manner. And that is a slightly different thing. But yeah, it depends on the mood that you're in the day as well, and how that's going to land with you, right? So yeah, I see Danny has a hand up, and I see there's a few comments coming in here on the chat as well. Danny, did you want to add something? Or I think I've seen a hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I've found this to be really subjective to the culture as well. So I've worked in different cultures where negative feedback is really desired. So recently, for example, I was working in the Middle East, and I kept giving positive feedback, and the feedback I received was, stop giving us positive feedback, we want negative feedback so we know how to improve. So it really depends, but the approach I generally take is like a sandwich. So start with good, go into something that they need to work on, and then end with good as well.
It's definitely a technique that is used and can be used very effectively. Yeah, brilliant, Danny. And the culture piece is really key. I think, I mean, and we don't want to kind of wipe everyone with the same, but in Ireland, we're not great with people constantly giving us positive feedback as well, right? That we do feel challenged by that often as well. Niamh, I see that your hand's up, so I'll just go quickly to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly add to that. I think I've got experience both in the social care and NHS in the UK, and you're right, it's culture as well, isn't it? But also feedback that's about the system. If staff or the team can understand it's about the system and it's not about the individual, and I think then you can really lead to improvement. And I think that's creates a really dynamic, great bond with a team. But I think when it can be taken personally, and I've read this recently around stuff around racism stuff, when that can be taken personally, then there can be no change, because you can't move that person on to see that's not about them individually.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I read like just an example of that, right? So if you want to give someone feedback on something that they've done, right? So it can feel personal, but it's how you phrase it. So rather than saying, "Oh, you are great at presentations," you say, "That was a great presentation because X, Y, and Z." Do you know? So you're taking the personal aspect out of it. You're talking about the work, and it's not about you being branded based on something that you've done. So thank you. I realize I'm looking at Shay and I'm like, okay, better move along, get through the actual content. But I suppose it's part of it as well. It's the way that we run sessions, whether they be online or in person, is to try and engage all of the people in the space, because you bring a lot of value based on your experience. And I think it's good to have these conversations. So I'm just going back up and I'm just going through some of the stuff that's on chat. So setting collaborative working options in terms of, I think, setting having a good what was done to cultivate the good experience, setting expectations and having information and answers available. People having felt like they've been listened to, like they're trusted, and there was respect given. Everyone had a specific role. So yeah, again, clarity on those roles and responsibilities, trust and honesty, having a plan. Yeah, very regular check-ins, trust coming up again, humor. Yeah, myself and Shay were talking about that before you come back. It's a key piece to a successful team, to be able to laugh together. And that idea of jumping in when it, when it's needed to get something maybe over the line. And then there's a bits and pieces here around feedback. It prefers positive feedback if it's done in a constructive and demeaning way. It's not useful, right? And it's not going to land. Feedback that supports learning. There was a book written called Thanks for the Feedback. I have not read the book, just to flag that, but I've read a little bit of stuff from it, and in that they say it's Stone and Heen, I think, or Hen, but they say that there's feedback should be one of three things. It should be gratitude, it should be coaching, so a constructive manner, or the third piece, it should be for evaluation. So if you're being evaluated against some sort of matrix or some maybe other people, but for evaluation. If it doesn't fall into one of these three areas, then is it really feedback? Was their kind of question. Yeah, totally agree with that. The speaker is saying it's about who it lands with. Yeah. It works for them in terms of comms. Feedback can be constructive as long as it encourages team and personal growth. Yeah. Whole piece in communicating with children. Yeah, exactly, Karen. That element of removing them as a human from what they're doing. I spent my time trying not to say good girl to my daughter, and it's really hard because it's been inbred in me from a very, very young age. Encouraging self-evaluation. Thanks, Chloe. And no place for destructive feedback. That's a really good point. It's about how you feel after the feedback. Yeah. And that's, as a leader, it's important to check in how people are feeling in the process of you maybe delivering feedback. So there's a lot there. I want to just show you a couple of pieces of work have been done around what it really takes to create a good and successful team. So this was research actually done by Google. This was actually not released until I left Google, and I was no way involved in it in my time there. But they were looking for, when they started this research, they wanted to find what is the ultimate skill combination that you can have in a team that really makes it successful. But what they concluded is that there is no skill combination that actually makes a successful team. But there are 5 characteristics that really showed up in those teams that were working well and doing really good work together. This is called, I think it's Project Aristotle. You can see the link here. You can go and read. There's lots on it. And it really brought to the forefront psychological safety, because it was the top thing by far that they found was needed on a team to be successful and to work well together. So what they mean by this is that the team members feel safe to speak their mind, to take risks, and to be themselves, to be the person that they are when they are in that environment. And there's a lot of research. So this is since, I think this came out in 2015. Since then, there's been a lot more discussion around psychological safety and the elements of it and the challenges around inclusion and diversity in this space. And I would encourage you to go and have a look at this. But ultimately, that safety is a key thing. And particularly when you're trying to create innovative teams, you need people to be able to voice concern, or to say this isn't going to work, or to be able to push back a little bit on what the status quo might be. The second thing is that people on the team are dependable. So the team could count on each other to do high quality work and to do it on time. So that was the second thing. The third is, and this was mentioned in the chat quite a bit, there's structure and clarity. Team members have clear roles, there are clear plans, there are clear goals in where we are going and what we are trying to achieve. The next thing was that the work itself provided meaning for the individual team member. So a certain sense of job satisfaction. Now, this doesn't mean that the person has to love their job and be absolutely passionate about the actual task that they're doing. They could do, they might really love their day-to-day job and what they do. But it could also mean that the job actually helps them fulfill other things outside of their life. It might give them enough money to live the life that they want to do, to engage in the hobby that they absolutely love. So it does provide some sort of satisfaction, but that can look different for different people. And the last is that, the team, that purpose or impact. And what they mean by this is the team member believes the work that they are doing on a day-to-day basis actually feeds into this bigger purpose. Okay, so that people can connect what they're doing with the higher kind of impact that the organization or the team are trying to have. Okay, so this was, has anyone come across this before? This research, yeah, it's been out there for a number of years. As I said, it's from 2015, and it's one piece that's been done, but I think you can look at this and you can see how this might make sense. It was interesting, a few years after it came out, I was back and I was talking to someone who was still working within Google, and I asked them how they were using this, how were they using this research internally in the teams that they were working with. One of the interesting things they said was that, if they are working with a team and the psychological safety isn't there, the dependability isn't there, one of the things they do is they double down on structure and clarity. You have to get that right. And that's what allows you over time to build that dependability and to build that psychological safety. It's one of the things they were doing. But I thought that was interesting. Even though it was third, it was really a linchpin to make sure that the other two can happen, particularly for new teams coming together. Like, it's hard to have dependability on people when you've just started working with them, or psychological safety when you've just started working with them. But you can get structure and clarity right from early on. You can try and get that in place. I'm sure some of you as well have come across Patrick Lencioni before. And so he did the 5 dysfunctions of the team. And then a number of years later, the 5 behaviors of a team are kind of the flip side of the 5 dysfunctions that he talked about. But his whole thing is that the key to success of a successful team is trust. And it's been mentioned in the chats, and I'm sure a number of you probably come up on a number of the conversations. But the whole thing here is like, if a team is able to trust each other, they will be able to be open and honest. And if they are able to be open and honest, they will be able to have a bit of conflict, but good conflict that actually helps you challenge each other and move forward and come up with new ways of doing, or at least that conflict will allow you then to have had your voice heard. So then you're more likely then to commit to what you're going to do going forward as a group. Okay. And if people are more committed, then they're going to keep themselves accountable and hold other people accountable to the work that they're doing. And ultimately, then that's going to lead to results both for the individual goals and for the broader team goals. But his whole thing is the foundation of trust is absolutely key. Again, anyone come across this or worked with any of this before? I'd be curious for any thoughts or feedback. And you don't have to either. We only got a set amount of time. So
I was just going to say it really resonates with me because I worked recently with a team, and I found myself a member, the behavior of a certain member. I actually used that language myself when I was describing it to someone else, and I hadn't really thought about trusting team members, but that's exactly what popped. I said, they've lost my trust. I don't trust them anymore. I don't trust them to do the work they say they're going to do. So yeah, wow, right to the foundation of what my yeah.
And it's interesting because I was reading like about the difference between trust and psychological safety, which is an interesting one. Trust is normally between two people. It's that kind of two dynamic piece. But then the psychological safety is the group kind of trust of sorts, right? Do you trust that this group in a sense? So and again, there's lots of kind of out there and what the differences are between these two things. Because they're similar in feeling, right? That psychological safety and the trust. So, one of the things that Patrick Lencioni says, is in order to build trust, we need to overcome our need to be invulnerable, right? So we need to put a bit of ourselves out there and the individuals within the team need to do this. This is how over time we can build trust. And so, like, as a leader, right, as someone who may be managing teams or working with teams, taking that first step, like, I'm not going to say go out there and put everything out on the table, be completely vulnerable, and like that's not what it's about. But you can try to connect with your team members in a way that starts to build that trust. So help them understand who you are, right? What your expectations might be as a member of your team. And often leaders will do this naturally, but it's good. It's worth noting and saying again. Also sharing with people why you have chose to be in this project, to be in this company, to be in this role, to understand your kind of motivations can be really useful. Be explicit about how you might be under pressure. Some of us are better than others, but letting them know this is what will happen and it's okay, but to give them that sense of what it might be. Your preferred communication methods. Again, everyone's different. And I think, now that a lot of groups are working hybrid as well, these things need to be explicitly kind of said to get everybody on the same page at the start. And sometimes you can talk about your skill set and maybe your gaps. I mean, you might not want to put it as gaps, but you might want to put it in what are your learning, like what do you want to learn as well as a manager? What are you thinking about exploring next? So yeah, giving them a bit more of a sense of you. I'm not going to get you to do this now because, but you can take it away with you to actually think about, like, well, what would you say to someone if you were to if you got a new team member, would you be comfortable to sit down and to share some of this stuff with them? So I think it is as a manager or a leader on you to give something, but also then as well, take time to understand the same from them, right? So if some people are more willing than others, but try to understand even from observing what the answers to these questions might be for those individuals that you work with. And I think one of the things, I think, Karen, was what you said from your team, that idea that if a leader knows us, we feel seen a little bit more as well. So another piece of research that was done around trust was back in 1995. You can see links there where you can learn a bit more about this. So it was one of kind of the bigger pieces of research around like, what are the ingredients for trust on a team? And they identify kind of three things that can really help build trust across the team. So first of all is competence, right? That individual team members get the opportunity to really show their skills, right? So whether that be in their day-to-day job, but in meetings potentially as well. And also that it's okay for them to recognize and correct mistakes. And that comes back to that psychological safety piece, right? You nearly need that in place to ensure that people can, that it's okay to recognize and correct your mistakes. So we need the opportunity to be able to show our ability or our competence. The next piece is integrity, right? That people show up, they're on time, there's a culture of respect there. If people say they're going to do something, that they actually do it. And if you have, so depending on the type of group or organization that you might work with, sometimes you can have charters or values that you stipulate are important for this group. You know, if you say that we have values that we work and live by, what are they and are we doing it? Making sure that the behaviors are reflected there as well. And the last piece, which I think is very interesting, is benevolence, right? So this is that potentially even as a leader that you can show kindness and reward it on the team as well. Show that you care about the humans, not just the work that they're doing, okay? This requires to actively listen and essentially take care of yourself. And I think one of the things that come up in chat, which I thought really fed into this, I'm going back now to remind myself, this idea of jumping in, that you're willing to jump in and to help, either as a manager or other team members are willing to jump in and to support and help each other as things need to be done. So maybe that willingness to sacrifice when interests diverge. So that's what they say here, but it's that like, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to jump in and help you out here. That I believe that the other people in the team care for you, not just because you're doing the job that you're doing and you're helping them doing the job, but because you're another human being in their space. Okay. And over time, this is how we build trusts. So everyone in the team should be given the opportunity to show their competence and to build that integrity, and should be encouraged. So modeling care, consideration, kindness as a leader is absolutely key. As I said, you could go and read a bit more. That Forbes article is particularly interesting. Shane Snow takes it a little bit further. He also mentions as well that there's a fourth piece to this that has come in, which is consistency. So it's not just that you do this, but you do it on a consistent basis. Any thoughts on that? I'm saying this, but I'm sure Shay is looking at me going, not too many thoughts. I see Shane Snow's book was fantastic. I haven't read it, Sinead, but that's good. I'll definitely have a look at that. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the article. I thought it was really good how you looked at it and broke it down a little bit further. So for me, this whole idea of building a successful team is really about getting those foundations in place, right? Building the trust, having the structure and the clarity. And it's this idea that if you build that, that's your roots. So as challenges come along, you can actually navigate them a little bit more. So there is, for me, something about spending the time on really building the trust, creating the clarity, people understanding what you're trying to achieve, and that can help build trust over time. Build a successful team over time. So this is another little piece I just wanted to throw in on high performing teams. So this research was done back in 1993, and you can get more details at the link there. I'm trying to remember the name. I've got it at Katzen. Yeah, it's on the next page, so we'll see it there. But they identified that there are like lots of different types of teams. So they mentioned 5 kind of different types of team here. Okay, but not all of them can be defined as an actual team. So the first kind of group that they identified is a working group. So this is a collection of individuals who might share some information and best practice, but ultimately they work alone. They don't have a common purpose or any sort of mutual accountability. So it is a working group. And I'm sure many of us can be part of these working groups where we might like connect with peers who might be doing similar things. But essentially you've got your own kind of goals and things that you're trying to achieve. The next is a pseudo team. And this is a group that might call themselves a team, but there's no actual focus on a collective purpose. They might not work well together. Essentially, the sum of the whole is less than the potential of the individuals on the team. Okay, so they say they're a team, but they're not really functioning like a team. The next is a potential team. So they may be working towards a common goal, but how they're working together is not great. And there can be a lack of clarity in teams like this. So they may have a thing that they're trying to achieve, but no real clarity around roles, responsibilities, or how to coordinate their efforts. So, and these, I mean, out there in the world, there are a lot of groups that call themselves teams but may function like one of these three, okay? There it is, Katzenbach and Smith, they define a team or a high-performing team as the following. It's a small group of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose. So again, going back to the Google research, that common purpose that you're working towards. They have performance goals and an approach that they hold themselves mutually accountable. So they are working together to actually deliver on those goals and achieve that purpose. The difference here then between the real team and the high performance team is resilience. Okay, it's the ability to do this over and over again. Okay, so team resilience here is defined as a team's ability to absorb, cope, and recover from pressures or challenges or adversity as it comes along. So it's that you're doing things, but you're able to get up after challenges and get back to working well as a team together. Okay. Some of the things that these high performance teams do regularly are, first of all, they set a clear purpose and goals. And that was already mentioned for a real team as well. You get clear on the purpose of the team and clarify what needs to be done to move forward and assign who's going to do what. They give each other feedback. And in the article linked on the previous page, they reference some research that says the highest performance teams communicate about 6 times as many positive comments for every negative comment, which I think is fairly excessive, but it's to show that the positive comments should be in the higher end, right? There should always be more positive comments than there are negative ones. They have retrospectives. So when things don't go well or things don't work out, they are, and even if they do work out, they actually create an opportunity to discuss, and agree what made something effective or not, what could be done better, and talk about how would we do it differently if we did it again. So really creating that time for retrospectives. And last of all, the scenario plan. So they try to anticipate challenges and put contingency plans in place. And a big piece of being able to do that, again, is for people to be able to voice when they think something down the line is coming that might affect what we're doing. Okay, so you really want to put those a practice of voicing concerns in place to allow you to extract this from the team that you're working with. Again, that's where your safety and the trust needs to be there in order to allow people to say these things. Okay, so this is, and again, these are some of the things that these high performing teams do on a regular basis. And it can be really challenging because, scenario planning and retrospectives when time and resources are tight can be really hard to actually put in place, but can benefit long term. As I said, there's types of work. Again, I go back to that agile environment, and in programming, this is built in to the culture, but it's not built in across the board. So I want you just to leave you with a little thought, and I want you to think about the teams or groups that you may be part of. Okay, where do you see them on this curve? Okay, is it a working group? Is everyone just doing their thing? We're not really, you know, working towards anything. A pseudo team, we're calling ourselves a team, but I don't really know what the purpose is or who's doing what. Or maybe there's a potential team. I know what we're doing, but I have an idea what I'm doing, but I'm not really sure what anyone else is doing. And then, you know, if you're a real team, you do have that kind of shared kind of purpose, common purpose that you're working towards. You know what you're doing. You have a sense of what other people are doing, and you know you're having check-ins to enable you to get there. But if you're really a high-performing team, you're also then giving yourself, you know, giving feedback to each other, both constructive and positive. You are doing your retrospectives, so really looking at how things went after having delivered on something, and trying to do some sort of scenario planning, looking further down the line and figuring out where things might go awry, and sometimes they do. So folks, that's it. I feel like I've talked to you. Well, I have literally talked to you for half an hour. I really appreciate your engagement. I think it's really important in these sessions that we have that engagement. But yeah, look, I think, Shay, you're going to talk a little bit more about the masterclass and what we're doing, but it'd be fantastic to see some of you next year at the sessions that we run. And it really is a great program. We had some great feedback from last year. So yeah, great. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Lucy. Cheers. So I'm going to cover off a few points, everyone, and then there's opportunities for questions if you do have any. So first of all, what's happening next? Well, we've another taster next week on Tuesday, and that's with another one of the facilitators on the program. And that taster will be on diversity and unconscious bias. If you haven't already registered for it, it's on next Tuesday at lunchtime. Again, I'm going to pop into chat the link for it in a second. And then also we have the program which is open for registration, and I'm going to share my screen in 1 second and just give you a little bit more information about that program. First of all, I'm just popping into chat the link to register for the taster next week, so that should be in there now. And then secondly, for people who are interested in hearing more about the higher level program, I'm just going to pop that into chat as well. So please feel free to register for both of those. I am also going to share my screen now and just give you a little bit more information on the wider level program. So Lucy gave a great, I think you can see my PowerPoint now. Lucy gave a great introduction into the topic of team dynamics there, and not only gave you a sample of the content, but I suppose also a little bit about the learning experience on this program, where it's collaborative, there's discussion and there is chat, so it's very much not talking to a PowerPoint. In terms of the program itself, you can see on screen there that delivery is mainly online. We will have the first class in hybrid, so you could attend online or you could come in person into Tangent and Trinity College Dublin if you want to meet some of your classmates in person. The duration of the program is 8 weeks, starting on January 18th, and it will generally always run on Wednesdays in the mornings, 10 to 1, sometimes on the shorter sessions, 11:30 to 1. The course fees are $750 for early bird, and that's if you pay before early January, or $950 is the full rate. And then maybe most importantly is what content are we covering. So you can see in the bottom left of my screen there the session titles that we have. So anyone who attended the taster last week will have got a sample into some of our content around emotional intelligence. We'll be covering that from your own perspective, and then also from a team and relationships perspective. And then the next main content session that will happen is team dynamics, which you got a sample of today, followed by diversity and unconscious bias, and then finally wrapped up with a storytelling session, which kind of enables people to wrap all the theory that they've learned to date into a story that hopefully they'll bring back to their organization to make some impact. What I didn't mention was the greenhouse sessions. You can see there that we've 3 greenhouse sessions interspersed across the 8 weeks. And that's really your opportunity to apply the theory and the content that you've learned to a real world challenge at work. They're facilitator led sessions. but it's really a lot of peer learning, peer discussion and chat. And we've gotten great feedback from past participants, where I guess people realize that the challenge they have isn't just unique to themselves, and others have similar challenges, and there's a learning there in that. So that's a quick run through the program. I am also popping up here a QR code for a feedback form. It is the quickest feedback form you'll ever see in your life. You can scan it there with your phone, and it should take you all of 45 seconds. We'd love to hear from you. I'll also pop a link to that into chat as well. And I'll share it out with the slide decks after the session. But what I'm going to do now, I think we do have some time for questions. So I'm going to stop share. And if anyone has any questions for Lucy, feel free to pop them into chat, or of course you can unmute and ask directly as well. So welcome any questions. Danny, is your hand up?
Yeah, question for Lucy. So if you're in a team and there's no declared like manager or lead, and if you don't particularly want to do it, what would be your advice to encourage others to lead? Because if like in my case, I have a lot of experience of leading teams, and I prefer at this point to be in teams where I'm not necessarily leading them. So what would you advise?
I'd be curious. I suppose I would have questions as to why there isn't a leader at the minute. Is it just it's not how the team works, or?
Well, this is regarding like study setup kind of thing, rather than work setup.
Okay. I mean, I suppose the best thing like that I would recommend to do is to suss out, is there any interest in the team, right? So I think a big part of it is just identifying, is there an interest level there? And defining what does that leader do, it can, because as you say, it's a kind of a study type thing, what would be their role, to understand that, and then figure out who might be interested in it. Like that's where I'd start. But I suppose, if the question is, how do I make someone lead when nobody wants to lead, it's a much more challenging answer. And I don't know if I have the answer to how do we force people to lead if they don't want to, because I think ultimately the answer there is you don't really want to force people to do it. The option then is to take what needs to be done and divide it out so that it's across multiple people,
Yeah, cool. That's what I had figured. Cool. Thank you.
Always.
I'm just looking through chat. I don't see anything else in there. I think Chloe's hand is up though.
Yeah, just another quick question for Lucy. Do you have any advice on breaking, like I guess, a negative cycle of communication within an existing team?
I suppose, again, it's very hard to answer these questions without the specificity. I think you need to identify what is meant by negative cycle, first of all. I think you need to get clear on that so that it's you can really start to move forward with solutions for it. And is it with multiple people or is it with individuals? Really figuring out where it's coming from, and if it is from one particular individual, then I think there's a one-to-one conversation that probably needs to be had. If it's just a team that's not really communicating well, or it's not, I think just putting in front of the group as a whole, here are some research back ways in which communication can be done better on teams, and I would like for us to try it, even if it's for a short period of time. And I think finding one or two things that you think people could actually implement is a good start. So it might just be one thing, right? One small thing that might change the dynamics, and if people can see that has a positive impact, then they might be more susceptible to other approaches as well. Does that make sense, Louis?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I guess the question, a better way of asking is whether to leading by example is enough, or whether you need to to directly tackle it by communicating with people. But I guess it makes it both.
It is a mix of both, because you want to see it, if you try something out, does it work, and maybe you need to bring it to people and sort of say, oh, I've been trying this, you know. So I think this idea of prototyping and not committing to doing something forever, but let's try it for X period of time and see how that works, can be really useful, because people don't feel they're being dictated. This is the way it is for life, you know.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Nice.
Any other questions, folks? If not, thank you again for attending, and hopefully we will see you next week for our final one before Christmas break. Christmas is upon us, huh? Snuck up on me for sure.
Great. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Spend some time with you.